Hey, what's up? Welcome back to Coffee and Current Events, and today I have another mapping update for you. And today we're going to talk about some very interesting stuff. We're going to be discussing where Ukraine will likely launch their upcoming spring offensive. There's a lot of areas the Ukrainians could strike, but there's a limited amount of equipment they have and a limited amount of manpower, and most importantly, a limited amount of time. So they have to strike in certain areas. They can't strike the entire front line. As much as they would probably like to, they have to strike in certain areas. And we're going to be discussing which areas they will most likely be striking in. So I'm going to be addressing number one, the best area Ukraine could attack in this offensive. This is the area that, if they win, could literally turn the tide of the entire war. All right, this is the rough border of Zaporozhye, at least that region that the Russians control. The reason why this place is so important is because it's the land bridge between the Russian forces in Donetsk and Luhansk and the Russian forces down in Kherson. Now here's the thing, if the Ukrainians are able to break through the Russian lines and sever that land bridge, Russian forces in Donbass are no longer connected to Russian forces in southern Ukraine. This is going to create a massive supply issue for the Russians because, as we've seen, Russia's logistics kinda suck. So most of the supplies to the Russian forces in southern Ukraine are most likely coming straight out of Mother Russia through this land corridor to Kherson and Zaporozhye and the rest of Russia. If this land corridor is severed, Russia will be forced to send up most, or if not all, their supplies through the Kerch Bridge or via ferry from mainland Russia into Kherson. The problem with that is a Kerch Bridge could easily be destroyed. As you can see, this is the Kerch Bridge. I mean, look at this thing. The Ukrainian military has proven themselves very capable of destroying targets deep behind enemy lines, and they literally struck this bridge before. So it's highly possible this bridge could be struck. If this bridge were to be struck, Russian supplies would then literally be severed from Russia into Crimea, and if they're severed from Russia to Crimea, they're severed from Russian forces in Kherson as well, and this will create a supply disaster. Russia will then be forced to rely on ferry, which ferry is extremely unreliable considering the fact that the Ukrainians have access to HIMARS rockets and other sources of artillery. This will basically create a siege scenario for the Russian forces in Kherson, and also a siege scenario for the Russian forces in Crimea. But here's the thing, the Russian forces understand that. They understand that the Ukrainians will probably target this area, so they've heavily entrenched themselves there, and therefore it will be extremely hard for Ukraine to break through this area. So although it's a very good area for Ukraine to strike, it's probably not too likely considering the massive casualty risk Ukraine could incur. Now, the other likely option I think Ukraine would strike is the Bakhmut region. Now, why would they strike this region? If the Ukrainian forces can recapture Soledar and from there take Krasna Hora, they can threaten the Russian forces there with encirclement and therefore force the Russians to withdraw, which would cause over 8 months of Russian gains to be practically evaporated. At the very least, that would be a morale disaster for the Russians. But that's not the only spot the Ukrainians could strike. They could also strike near Avdiivka. Most likely, the Ukrainian offensive will not be in Avdiivka itself, it will be around Avdiivka. Because if the Ukrainian forces break through this Russian line, they could shoot for Donetsk, and that would be a terrible morale and military blow for Russia. So those are the places I think Ukraine will most likely strike. That's my input for today. God bless you, and make sure you subscribe to the channel that way you're not missing out on any updates we have coming out for you guys. God bless. See you later.